Constantin, thank you for coming.
It's
been some time since we reached out to you wanting to do this podcast. I know you're very busy. You're based out of Singapore and Philippines, and now periodically here in Australia because you're looking to expand into this market. Can you just give me a quick insight in terms of what Locad is and how it came about?
Yeah, definitely. And again, thanks for having us. Locad, we call it the logistics engine for modern consumer brands. And the objective is really to provide a cloud supply chain infrastructure for brands that are distributing their products in Australia as well as Southeast Asia, and to basically bring the entire supply chain to the cloud and create a plug-and-play offering. So if you're a brand selling omni-channel in e-commerce channels as well as in offline retail, we ensure your inventory is in sync across all channels, is available across all channels. We then provide you access to a network of warehouses, 21 warehouses in the region that are flexible, scalable, and available based on your needs. And we fulfill both your B2B and B2C orders, plug you into all the different last mile delivery options, and now most recently can also support Logistics X Factory with freight and import. So ultimately, it's a factory-to-door offering in one platform across Southeast Asia and Australia that makes it easy for you as a brand to expand.
Factory-to-door. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. So that's essentially from manufacturing to door for your customers who chooses your service.
Yeah, we started purely warehouse to door, and that could be the consumer in a D2C order or the retailer.
Right.
But as we're working with many brands across multiple markets, one of the challenges had been the import side. So we work together with freight forwarders who we have on the platform, who are the experts on their relevant trade lanes. But we bring it into the platform and also provide importer of record and merchant of record services. So let's say you're a brand from Australia and you're looking to expand to Indonesia or Singapore, and you might not want to go in full blast, setting up your own entities, getting your own import licenses and so on.
Right.
You can leverage our rails basically to get your products distributed in this market. So a big part of it is also making it easy for brands to expand into new markets across the region.
Right. Earlier on, you touched on multi-channel. Now, can you just explain to some of our listeners and viewers what does that mean, omni-channel, those terminologies? Because I hear often, I know what it means, but a lot of our viewers who could be young startups looking to have a great product, looking to expand internationally and so forth. Some of these jargon, some of them may know, but most of them probably don't. How do you define multi-channel or omni-channel?
Yeah, great question. And indeed, those are kind of some buzzwords throwing around, right? I think if we're taking a step back and cut out all the buzzwords, if you're a brand today, you want to be available for sale and available for your consumers in all the different sales channels that they are. And where, like back in the day, you would have offline-centric brands that are predominantly using retail, and then you would have D2C, online-only brands that are selling directly to consumer via their web shop, and that used to be fairly distinct, right? But today, ultimately, it's all become integrated. So if I'm a brand manager today, I would be selling on my own web shop. I'd be selling on marketplaces like Amazon. I would have a couple of retail channels that I want to be available in. And that's ultimately what we call multi-channel or online channel, omni-channel. The problem that brings with it, I mean, it's great for generating sales. It's great for being omnipresent, for building your brand. But if you're the supply chain manager, it actually makes life very complicated, because now you have all these different sales channels that are generating orders. And if they're not somehow in sync in one platform, it's very easy to lose sight. And you often get inventory inefficiency. That's, I think, a key value proposition of Locad is inventory consolidation across all sales channels. So let's say you have 10,000 pieces of a product in your warehouse. Those 10,000 pieces are simultaneously available for sale in all your channels. On your web store, in Amazon, they're available for reorders of your retailers, so that you have a single pool of inventory across all channels, ensuring that you maximize your availability and that you maximize your sales, and you know how much you actually have on stock in one platform.
Right.
It's ultimately all about making your life simpler.
Okay, well, that's a pretty succinct, brief explanation of what Locad is. Before I sort of dig deeper into that sort of tangent, how did you come about in creating Locad? Because you are one of the main founders. What was your background leading up to the Locad experience?
Yeah, we started 10 years ago on the retailer side
Yes.
of the supply chain world. Ultimately building out a global fashion group, which owns Zalora in Southeast Asia and the Iconic in Australia. We were a fashion e-commerce company. That meant being in retail online ourselves. We spent a lot of time piecing together the supply chain. So
Yes.
building warehouses, finding 3PL partners, couriers, building a technology that integrates the whole thing. So I spent about 6-7 years doing that in Southeast Asia, learning firsthand how hard it is and how much time and money goes into piecing all of these aspects of the supply chain together yourselves. But at the same time, also got a front row seat working with a lot of brands, especially in fashion and lifestyle, who are going online for the first time, often on one of the platforms like Zalora or Iconic, and then ultimately started to add more sales channels online and started to eventually want to integrate this. And yeah, I think that way we learned about the challenges ourselves doing it all, as well as working with brands, and wanted to ultimately now create an open commerce infrastructure platform, an open logistics platform for consumer brands that solves that and makes it a lot easier, and especially that takes out all the fixed costs and the overhead comes with running and building this yourself, to instead just bring the cloud aspect of it to logistics, where you just plug in and you get all services available to you, and you pay on a consumption basis based on the storage and the orders you fulfill, rather than having to get locked in very inflexible and fixed cost heavy structures where you need to do everything yourselves.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that it was because of your experience, or rather a difficult, challenging experience in settings or establishing that e-commerce model for the companies you mentioned, and you learned the pitfalls of what to do and what not to do and so forth? And this is what is the ultimate motivation why you wanted to start Locad?
Yeah, I think we realized that it was hard. It got some gray hair over this.
Yes.
But we also realized that it dilutes brands and retailers from their focus. Because if you start a fashion e-commerce company, it's because you want to bring great fashion to the people. If you start a brand, then you're passionate about product, about marketing, about reaching your consumers, not necessarily about logistics. I mean, you and I and Nisha love logistics.
Yes.
But typically, if I'm running a brand, then I'm not doing it because I dream about warehouses and 3PLs and pick and pack and freight and whatever.
Yes.
But I wake up dreaming about my product and getting it in the hand of consumers. So we want to take the heavy lifting off those brands and retailers, and basically give you your time and your energy and focus back to actually build the retail business, and leave the logistics to Locad.
It's an honorable effort in terms of, when you approach a challenging situation or a challenging task of setting up a logistics platform, fulfilling e-commerce needs and so forth, from one side of the fence, and then to say, well, that was hard. Now let me go in, create a company that will take a bit of that difficulty or burden away from my future customers, so that it's a new business model and so forth. That takes a special kind of mentality, a special type of person. And I must say, it has been ring true with most of our guests on this podcast. So I'm very enjoying the fact that you said that, because, at least we're staying consistent with the quality of our guests, because what you've described is not easy. Trust me, I know as well. And I've experienced that firsthand. And it takes a special kind of people to know something hard, instead of running the other way, but then run towards it, embrace it, and then go, well, I'm going to make it a little bit better. And through that motivation of wanting to make it better, here's my business model. There's a lot of people in the logistics industry, but there are not a lot of people such as yourself who will run towards something that is difficult. Most of them just run away. And I commend you for that. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, building any business is difficult, right? Building a brand, building a retail business is also tremendously difficult. And we just hope to make it a little bit easier by letting the entrepreneurs and managers that are building brands focus on that brand building part and the retailing part, and make the logistics a bit easier. But I think both sides of the equation are hard. I think it does get a bit easier if you can, if you have other shoulders to stand on and you don't have to do absolutely everything yourselves. And I think that's what excites me so much about the state of e-commerce and retail today, that there is much more of an e-commerce stack. Like you don't have to do everything yourself anymore. like Shopify to help you create a great storefront. There's Locad for logistics. There are other options that help you improve your marketing. So it's becoming a little bit easier. Obviously, It's still a tremendously hard journey, but at least there is now an enablement stack that allows entrepreneurs to build brands much faster.
I agree.
Than before.
I 100% agree. One of my biggest criticism of my industry is that there's a lot of us in it, but not a lot of us love it. In fact, most of us hates it.
I know you love it, so that makes us good partners, right?
But I'm one of those weirdos. And by the way, it's good that you mentioned that because I almost forgot. Full disclosure, TGL is a supplier to Locad for some of the services that you need on the ground here in Australia. And we're very proud of that association and has been working very well. The barrier to entry to this industry is very, very low. Anybody with half a brain and a laptop can start a freight forwarding company. That's the reality, okay? You just need to know who to call, how to contact, do the booking that most customers can't be bothered doing or don't know how to do, right? It's glorified data entry. That's what it is in the freight forwarding world anyway, right? In that climate, we have a lot of cowboys, fly-by-nights that come in and they ruin the market for everyone else. They crash and burn themselves and they leave, but they just ruin the market for everyone else, right? That's the reality. And I think this is very true across the globe, in most continents. The only country I've ever actually discovered great logistics people with the highest level of consistency is Germany.
And that's where it began.
Yeah. And I've said this in the past many, many times. I go, most countries I go to, I speak to my colleagues in this industry, a lot of them are mediocre at best. There are some brilliant people, don't get me wrong. There are some brilliant people, but it's far and few between. Most of them don't want to be there. There is no motivation, no training, poor education, poor recognition, the whole box and dice. But the only country I go there where there is consistency is Germany. Every person I meet in Germany with, be it our agents or a network event or so forth, everybody just switched on about it. And I do understand from some of my friends in Germany that, logistics is a highly well-regarded sector of employment in Germany. Case in point, DHL, all of the powerful ones, they're all from Germany, right? Hapag-Lloyd, the shipping lines and so forth. Germany's an outlier when it comes to logistics quality. So it doesn't surprise me. Constantin, you're German. Your partner, Janis, is German. Most of Nisha, you're not German. No. Where are you from?
So originally from Hong Kong. Grew up in the States. Ended up in Manila. When I joined Locad, it was much more about the regional side of the business and building up network. But I feel like I'm a pure third culture kid. So I understand moving. I understand when there's an asset of a business and you're worried about it or your own items moving. And that's where I kind of ended up at Locad.
What's your favorite part of your job?
Talking to clients. I think at the end of the day, when I have a really great conversation with a partner or client, it makes my day. Yeah.
Good conversation with clients are far and few between. Most of the conversations are normally, how do you handle the bad ones? How do you handle the bad conversations?
Well,
or how do you digest it?
The first thing you do is take a breath. The second is understanding the value that you're trying to provide and making sure that they see it. And then being patient. Take it one question at a time.
And how long have you been in the industry for?
With logistics tech, only about 2.5 years with Locad.
Wow. So Locad's your first foray into the industry.
Into logistics, yes. And I think it's very important. On the customer experience side, it adds up. Again, because of e-commerce and where it's at, I thought it was the best industry to come into at this time.
Absolutely.
This also came from the retail and e-commerce side. Yeah. So we have quite a number of folks who've seen the other side of the table and
so both sides of the fence of the same farm, let's call it that, right? Right. It's really great for me to hear young folks such as yourself speak so confidently and calmly about your responsibilities. You're in business development. You should be enjoying to talk to customers. The last thing I want to hear, I don't want to talk to customers. Then you're in the wrong job. But secondly, to say with, the level of confidence and the grace you have a bright future ahead of you. And I'm not trying to be patronizing because I talk to a lot of folks, believe me, and not a lot of them sound like you. Yeah. So, Constantin, if I can address the elephant in the room regarding your business model. Firstly, I think your business model falls into, on one hand, it falls into a bit of a Logitech type of environment, right? You can, this digitech or the digital revolution of supply chain. On the other hand of your business model, it's a structure. What you bring to the table for your customer is a structure. Yes, there's a tech element, but there's also a structural, implementation, structural service value that you bring to the table, where you're taking a bit of that burden and workload away from your potential customers, which if it wasn't for you, they'll be doing it themselves. Yeah. For that, I think it's a super interesting business model. In this day and age, with the digitization of our purchase experience, most well-regarded products are sold in multiple markets, not just one market. Those days are long behind us, right? So that particular customer will need to go to another market and another market, rinse and repeat that entire process again. Your business model is fantastic, right? They come to you, all the markets you've already established, you would have done the hard work, you would have done the groundwork, and most importantly, you offer a single platform in terms of tech engagement for that customer. And I always say Amazon is our industry's biggest threat. Unlike, for example, you can say DHL is our number one, no, not number one, but a direct competitor. Yes, Panalpina, direct competitor. Schenker, direct competitor. Anyone who does traditional fabric, direct competitor. I can compete with them because there'll be customers that they don't want that I want. I can compete. But I can't compete with Amazon. Do you know why? They've got customers. I can't give my customers. I can only do shipping. That's scary stuff for a traditional shipper like me. How do you find that experience with Amazon compared to Locad? Because now they're going into, like yourself, factory to door, encompassing the whole experience, utilizing their warehouse facilities. How do you guys approach that, I guess, newfound competition from the likes of Amazon? Even Flexport has recently launched this whole encompassing supply chain delivery service and so forth.
Yeah. So indeed, right, the value we provide to our brands and to our clients is that we are a logistics network as opposed to one leg of a logistics service. We're fundamentally a network, a logistics platform that gives you an end-to-end supply chain offering. And so far, these logistics networks have mainly been built by marketplaces. That's Amazon, that's Alibaba with Changyao, that's, for example, Lazada and Shopee in Southeast Asia, where we have a big presence. And that's largely been because these e-commerce platforms had to build it, right? They had to build those distribution networks. But they're typically walled gardens, right? Because Amazon has built an Amazon supply chain that was meant to fortify and be a competitive mode for Amazon. And the same happens with, for example, Lazada in Southeast Asia and so on. While these platforms are now discovering that they have such a big logistics and supply chain footprint and that they could also open this to third-party customers and could potentially also support business outside of their own marketplace, we believe that fundamentally our DNA as an open commerce infrastructure platform is very different because our DNA is client first, is brand first. We don't have a marketplace that we try to protect from competition. Our only stakeholder is the brand, right? And that means we're always merchant first, brand first. Like the first thing we wake up in the morning is how can we make life better for our merchants, for our brands? And it's the last thing we think about when we go to bed. And that means we are by definition open. We support orders on Amazon, on Shopify, on any other brand.com platform, on TikTok Shop, on any sales channel that comes in. We immediately think, how do we make it as easy, as frictionless as possible for our brands to take advantage of these new platforms? When your core business, that is 99% of your business, is actually a marketplace, is actually a consumer business, then you're always torn because your DNA is to protect your marketplace, to protect your consumer business. And yeah, the B2B arm is a little bit of enablement, a little bit of monetizing your merchant base, but actually you kind of want to keep them within your walled garden because that's your moat, right? And in a way, to make the B2B business really successful, those B2C platform companies would have to destroy their own moat by democratizing it for all. And that's actually not that easy. So I think while those marketplace logistics offerings, in particular niche offerings, can be quite powerful and they have economies of scale and so on, I think the biggest hurdle they have is that they're not truly open and not truly brand and merchant first. because actually where you make your money is on the consumer platform side of the business. So in a way, you said this is their biggest advantage. They have the end customers. I think it's always a duality. In a way, that's an advantage. In a way, that's also the biggest weakness, because you're actually a consumer business that also dabbles in B2B services, not a B2B services business that lives and breathes and dies with serving brands in the best possible way.
Right. Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. Their focus is always on their platform, which is to on-sell the products to their final customers, and therefore that is their main focus of business model. And therefore the services they offer to their sellers plays second fiddle to the main, which is making sure that their e-commerce platform is profitable. Is that right in what you're trying to suggest?
Yeah, I think for us, the key is make the brand successful, right? And what does the brand want? It's not, we don't say, oh, we have this infrastructure that we anyway had to build for our consumer business. Let's try to monetize it with a bit of B2B. It's the other way around, right? What do we do to make the brand successful? So if you're a brand, do you want to sell on Amazon? I think for 80% of our customers, yes, for sure. Do you also want to sell on other channels? Yes, for 95% of our customers, absolutely. I want to build my brand.com. Because I want to have a direct customer relationship and I want to own my customer data. Do I want to give the customer data from my brand.com to the marketplace? Maybe not. I want to have an omni-channel business where I can do agile stock replenishment to the retail outlets from the same from the same stock I have in my warehouse for my e-commerce business, right? And I also want to be on other marketplaces, like maybe TikTok Shop now, right? Above all, I want to be in control because this is my brand and my business. And I definitely leverage the marketplaces that they are. Amazon is great, has a lot of traffic, but it also has its own platform governance. It uses its data and it uses your data in the way that it's most relevant for Amazon. It also has private label. It has a retail business with which is compete against you. So it's like you want to play on their platform, but maybe you don't want to be 100% dependent on it. Certainly not with your second and third leg business, your omnichannel retail business and your brand.com business. Some brands might choose differently, but I think many of the brands we work with quite deliberately value Locad because it's an open platform that is merchant first without any other interest. And then they leverage that to sell on Amazon and we fulfill those orders, to sell on brand.com, to sell on any other marketplace, because that gives the brand control.
It gives a bit of more independence from those. I mean, they might sell on those channels, but they are still sort of in control without any sort of competing agendas being, I guess, infiltrated by Amazon, or they're putting different layers of control over how they sell their products. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Including things that you want that a marketplace might not want, right? Like maybe you want custom packaging for your brand.com channel. You want certain inlays. You certainly want to own your customer data. And with Locad, we have no other interest in your customer data other than displaying it to you, right? We don't use that data to determine what private label product we launch next or where we can increase the take rate to squeeze out a bit more marginality from the brand, right? Like these are all the things as marketplaces are now maturing. It's ultimately a game of how much rent does the marketplace get, how much margin, and how much does the retailer get. And I think brands are increasingly quite sensitive to that and realize that you want to play there, but you want to not be entirely dependent.
Are they as savvy as you suggest, though?
Not always. Not always. Yeah. I think there is a consultative approach that we have to take.
Yeah.
They have their vision for their product. They have a vision for their brand. They know where they want to be, but they don't necessarily know all the steps. And then the ecosystem of the freight forwarding, of, the e-commerce support system, that's where we've come in.
Yeah. Like, I think the simple analogy is like for those folks that use a social media or what have you, we all know that tech is using our data somehow, but ask us trying to explain it, can't help you. Does it really impact us on a day-to-day basis? Not really. I'm sure this is what Amazon is doing to their customers. Valid point. Because there's value there which the customer doesn't understand or capturing, but but there is value, right? So do you guys use that as your sales tool to explain to your customers when they ask you similar questions like I have?
Yeah, I mean, typically brands come to us with certain problem statement or a certain need that they have, right? Because they came talking to us for a reason. And I think on this question of our brand savvy, I actually think, most of our customers are extremely savvy, each in their different areas, right? Some are extremely product driven, others know marketplaces extremely well, others are extremely good in building their brand.com business. Are they savvy in logistics? Some are, some not. Do they have to be? I'm not savvy in product development, right? Like that's where it makes sense to be part of a value chain. So I think ultimately every customer has slightly different needs when they come to us. But there are certain things that are universal, right? I think typically brands go to Locad when they want flexibility and a configurable supply chain. Because if you want to sign a 5-year contract where you have to exactly guarantee how many pallet positions you're going to pay for the next 5 years, you might as well rent your own warehouse, right? When you come to Locad, you pay for what you actually use, right? When you come to planning your fulfillment capacity, right? You might have 10x the number of orders on Black Friday weekend than 3 weeks ago, and it's our job to make that happen. So that flexibility and scalability is a common denominator. Then typically effective multi-channel selling is one. So typically brands that come to us value the fact that they get an operating system that seamlessly connects to all the different sales channels so that they can have one pool of inventory across all sales channels. And that sounds technical, but very simply, if you have 1,000 units, do you want those 1,000 units to be available to all the channels that you have? Or do you want to split your stock? Do you want to give 500 units to a marketplace warehouse, 300 units to this, 300 units there, and then be overstock on one channel, out of stock on another, right? So inventory consolidation, sell-through is the blood of a retail business. So typically brands value that and come to us because we offer seamless multi-channel selling. And then typically brands come to us because they want a partner that has structure and systems, but a certain degree of flexibility. So when you want customized branded packaging, that's something that we offer, right? We are quite flexible on, for example, inbound dates and so on, because we know that it's important the moment that your stock arrives in the port, you want it to go live, right? So those are all things where, because we are merchant first, we can typically provide the best service. So I think flexibility, scalability, being open to any sales channel, being good at multi-channel selling, and then having openness to features and customizations that brands need that are relevant for their business, whether it's bundling, whether it's custom packaging, whether it's this and that. Those are typically things that brands value when they come to us.
Right. What is a typical customer to Locad today?
Basically, they're looking for flexibility. They're looking for spending more time on their product, on their marketing, on their product catalog. And at the end of the day, they don't want to sacrifice the end customer experience, right? So they still want somebody to care enough to make sure that package and the pick and pack process, all of that still continues the way they would if they were doing it in-house.
So are you saying that most customers come to you comparing in-house to your service?
Yeah, renting a space versus outsourcing.
Do you have any customers that come to you that are using another 3PL experience? Yeah. And how have those conversations been? What are some of your success stories for our listeners and for them to understand what makes you guys shine compared to another 3PL who doesn't have your business model? That's this, international rollout plans. So.
There are typically three things you could do if you're not using Locad, right? One is fulfilled by marketplace.
Yes.
So you just give all of your stock to, say, Amazon and sell only on Amazon and let them deal with it. Working with a 3PL or running your own in-house operation. So it's typically one of the three. Or entering a new market and not being present at all yet.
Yes. So how does, say a customer's using another 3PL and they come to Locad, what has been the reason that drives them from their existing 3PL, not in-house? The in-house conversation is relatively straightforward. How do they compare the previous 3PL experience with yourselves, and what are some of the differences that you deliver, and so that the customer's going, oh, okay, now I understand?
Yeah, I think the first place is transparency. So when you look at our platform, there's a lot of information that we want to provide back to the brand, whether it's inventory movement, billing, everything's in one place for them. So they don't want to go back and forth from a shipping platform and their website plus the 3PLs, where now it's fully integrated. I think another part of it is always, how do we get closer to our customer? So at the end of the day, having a network, having a warehouse in Melbourne, having one in Brisbane is going to be very important, where they can split their inventory and then get that customer experience a little better. I mean, at the end of the day, pricing, but that's just
Never pricing. Never start any relationship on pricing.
yeah, exactly.
Because any relationship you start pricing, it will end on pricing. Actually, can I share just a bit of an anecdotal story? Yesterday, I had someone calling me. I mean, it was a smaller organization. The number came from Philippines. And I was so confused. So I answered the phone and forget her name now. Christelle from Philippines. And I'm going, oh, Christelle, your online inquiry about 3PL and so forth. Oh, yes. Look, and then long story short, she was a business admin person for a company here. They're looking to change their 3PL warehouse. They've got like 50 pallets stored in someone's warehouse, and they're looking for a different warehouse, and they don't want to pay a minimum weekly storage fee. So I'm explaining to someone who's an outsource agent in Philippines for a company who's based in Australia. So, it was very convoluted. And instead of me trying to sort of offer them our service, I thought, wait, this sounds like a small company. We want to save on costs. Got 50 pallets worth of stock that's not moving. Clearly paying a minimum weekly fee, doesn't want to pay. So there are some pressure points there. So instead of me going, oh yeah, we can do it cheaper, I'll just get on. First, I say, look, I think you need to let your CEO know that he or she needs to adjust their expectations. To help them out, I'm going to give you a bit of advice, because it sounds like the pressure point isn't that you don't want to pay the minimum weekly fee, right? It's because your stock is not selling.
It's sitting there, correct.
That's the pressure point.
Yeah.
So I go, has the warehouse been doing a good job? Oh yeah, they've been doing a fantastic job. And I said, well, you got 50 pallets. Minimum fee is $500 a month.
Yeah, it should be a month.
Right, $6,000. How much does this person want to save?
Yeah.
What's the end result? Because you're chasing your tail around, and you're chasing for what saving? $1,000? $2,000? For me to catch an Uber from here to Parramatta, it's going to cost me $200.
Yeah.
What are you trying to save? This is not the pressure point. So please remind your CEO, I think they've got the focus in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Because if they continue to chase their tail like that, they're not going to grow. They're going to go around the world in 30 days. I don't know why I did all this, by the way. So I treat it as my community service,
Nice.
right, for a small business owner. And this lady in Philippines, she was, oh, I totally agree. Thank you so much for spending this time. And I was like, no, because I come across these type of conversations a lot.
Yeah.
When people ask you for something, the first question is rarely what they really want.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some underlying pressure points. And I said, address the stock issue. This is not the minimum cost issue. This is a stock issue, right? So that's our experience from our front point that we're fielding. And I can imagine this will probably be very similar to how you guys may come across some customers that knock on your door thinking that, oh, we want to save money. But
correct,
thinking,
exactly.
Hang on. Is it really you want to save money, or can we help you restructure your business a bit?
And provide a different service, right? That elevates whatever they've been doing at a very basic level and taking it up a notch.
And that has to be worth something.
Exactly.
It's ultimately about helping you make money, right? I think that should be the thing. And of course, you make money by keeping your costs under control, but you make money above anything else by improving the overall efficiency in the supply chain. And that's why we have this network approach in Locad, right? Because in the end of the day, in logistics purely on price, I mean, somebody sells the pallet at X, and then somebody can make the pallet a couple of cents cheaper. But ultimately, a pallet is a pallet. It's a certain amount of space in the warehouse, and it costs something, right? And you can spend all the time in the world looking for the cheapest warehouse in town, but fundamentally, the spread is fairly low. So the question is, how can we instead help you make more money?
That's right.
And I think the first step always needs to be on improving sales. And fundamentally improving sales, we've seen two levers that are really important. One is ensuring your inventory availability across all of your channels, making sure you have the stock in the right place so you don't lose sales to customers that are looking for something. Because frankly, in today's world, especially in e-commerce, but also in retail, if it's not available, people will just look elsewhere and they will find it elsewhere, right? And probably buy from your competition. So stock availability, making sure your inventory is in sync, you have the right amount of stock on hand, and we give you predictive AI analytics to help you balance your stock is one, right? Then the second one is ultimately in the supply chain, transporting something from A to B costs a certain amount of money. A pallet costs a certain amount of money. There's only so much you can squeeze that. But can you make the overall supply chain more efficient? And Nish mentioned earlier, distributed, localized fulfillment is something we're really pushing. Where if you're a brand that is selling a lot across Australia, you might start with our warehousing in Sydney, but then we place some forward stock in Brisbane, place some stock in Melbourne. We're going to be opening Perth next year as well. And then suddenly, when a customer orders from Brisbane, that order gets routed to the warehouse in Brisbane, and what used to be an Australia Post interstate delivery that costs 40-50% more and takes several days becomes a local delivery within the same city. The customer gets it same day, next day, and you saved a lot on shipping. What you saved there on shipping by shortening the last mile is going to be more than you can ever squeeze somebody on getting your pallet a little bit cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Because we just took costs and inefficiency out of the system. So I think helping you increase revenue by improving inventory availability and giving your customers the right information at the checkout page, like short delivery windows, competitive shipping costs, that's important. Then raising the efficiency of the overall process is super important. And then I think reducing wastage, especially wastage that comes from consuming things the wrong way. So one thing that we really stand for with our brands is consumption-based flexible pricing. Because if you're running a brand in a dynamic retail ecosystem environment and you're supposed to lock in a certain amount of space for 5 years, I would be able to predict an e-commerce business in 5 years, right? So having this variabilized cost structure where we charge you fundamentally when you are making revenue as a brand, when you're fulfilling items, when you're selling, I think that's where we can provide a lot of value because we make sure that you don't end up with debt cost. And that's what can kill a business, right? Especially in retail. If you have debt stock that's not moving and you're not recycling it back to cash, and if you have a lot of fixed costs that you suddenly didn't need because you locked in at the peak of COVID, a warehouse that is now only 30% full, that's where cost becomes a real problem. In the end of the day, then whether that CBM cubic meter on the pallet ends up being 5% more or less expensive doesn't really matter, right? But how to create a cost structure that aligns with your value creation as a brand and helps you be successful and makes it predictable. I think that's where we can align our value with how the brand realizes.
So has this offering and advantage, been the most important success factor to Locad's rise in customer base?
I think the most important one is to champion the merchant. That's our number one value, and being merchant first. So anything we do, we go back from first principles. What champions the merchants, right? And champion the merchant doesn't mean merchant is always right. You want everything for free and pay nothing. But how can we structure our logistics network, our technology, as well as our charging scheme in a way that aligns interests to yours, right? So that we, as a logistics partner, make money when we help the brands make money, rather than being in this zero-sum relationship where we're just kind of trying to squeeze each other, right? So I think fundamentally that's been a success factor, and that's what drives the way we want to platformatize logistics and make it available like the cloud. That's driving our consumption-based pricing focus, where you pay for orders fulfilled, and you pay for space utilized, rather than me trying to lock you in for as many years as I possibly can, because it creates predictable cash flow for me, but might screw over the brand, right? So whenever we have to balance these, obviously we somehow need to live, but we want to make sure that we prioritize what is relevant to make the merchant, the brand successful, because that ultimately will help us grow together and become successful together.
With the macro conditions around the world, especially with all the downturn we've all experienced since COVID, and from our standpoint, the shipping volumes are all crashing, as signaled by all of the cheaper freight pricings in the marketplace today. Next year, most economists have said a recession is coming in 2024. So it's going to be very interesting in 2024. What are you seeing on your end, and how are you guys sort of, preparing for any sort of downturn in the economy?
I mean, obviously, economy moves in cycles, right? I think on our side of the business, which is more the distribution, warehousing, and final mile, it's a little bit less spiky than on the freight side, right? During COVID, shipping lines and freight forwarders were minting money, right? Suddenly the cost of moving a container from A to B was 3, 4, 5x of what it was before. The cost to fulfill an item in the warehouse never increased anywhere comparably. Hence, it's also not decreasing now, right? So ultimately, our cost per unit or revenue per unit is more consistent. We never had the bonanza that the shipping lines had, minting billions as they all did in the couple of years of COVID. But then also there's less of a valley now. I think, of course, we're seeing probably this retail holiday season that consumer spending is a little bit more muted than it has been. Of course, e-commerce, after the tremendous growth during COVID, is growing a little less. Overall, we are an e-commerce and omni-channel distribution platform, so probably about 2/3 of our business comes from e-commerce. About 1/3 now comes from omni-channel offline retail. That is growing less, but it's still at a higher base than it was a couple of years ago. And we're still seeing a lot of brands and merchants growing and making money. But of course, it's no longer the wild boom that has happened in COVID. And I mean, the people who are now complaining the loudest, largely shipping lines and to some extent freight forwarders, are also the ones who made
surprise me one bit.
Before, right?
It doesn't surprise me one bit. The pendulum swings wildly on the shipping line front. But I think we had a great chat. I think a lot of our listeners are new startup companies, mostly on e-commerce. A lot of our most viewed clips on our YouTube channel have been talking, brand specialists talking about how to establish brands, consultants talking about how to grow overseas. So we do know our audience are very well in tune with this type of conversation. And I think your business model fits nicely for what they want to achieve. To finish off this wonderful chat, a lot of our viewers are smaller brands, smaller startup brands. A lot of the consumption of our video has been on building brands, going to new markets, establishing proper channels in how they sell their products. From your standpoint, one of the most important facilitator of that, which is the e-commerce fulfillment side of things, what would be a very simple couple of liners in terms of advice for these younger companies?
Do your research. I think always go in, look at your providers, any vendors you want to work with, understand the value, and then take it from there. Don't jump in because you think you need help in building a website until you're sure of it. I think it starts there. And then from that point, making sure that your customers are still first. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to provide something where you're going to have that repeat buy. And that's what we're focused on.
And you guys are in which countries now? You guys are in definitely Philippines is where you started. Philippines, Singapore, Australia.
Yeah, so currently we're providing a logistics network across Australia and Southeast Asia. So Australia, then Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia. And we especially work with many mid-market brands who are expanding beyond their home market to new markets. Lots of Australian brands are quite successful now, expanding, and Southeast Asia is one market that has a lot of synergy.
Great.
Two of our warehouses, both Singapore and Hong Kong, are also great places to sell globally.
Yeah.
If you're shipping to the US, to Europe, closer to the manufacturing hubs in Asia.
Wonderful. So I think I highly recommend everybody check your website out, and we'll post links into our videos, and that it's certainly a very interesting business model to me, and I've been in logistics for a while now. Congratulations, guys. Thank you for having a chat with us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Really
Thank you
enjoyed
so
it.